Hello everyone, welcome again to Kurthi TV. My name is Garang. So this video is about the recent unilateral appointment of Bol Mel, and we know the appointment raised a lot of questions. Those of us who care about rules and democratic principles know that the unilateral appointment of Bol Mel by the chairman of SPLM, President Salva Kiir Mayardit, violates the SPLM constitution. I'm not going to go through the SPLM constitution because there is a brilliant article that was published on Panwilwil, and it goes through the constitution, the title of the article, and you can Google it for those of you who have not read it. The constitutional legality of the crowning of the crown prince in South Sudan. So it goes through the constitution regarding how the chairman is supposed to be selected, appointed, and also the two deputies, the National Liberation Council, the National Convention. So how all those officials are supposed to be selected, approved, and what the processes are. So it shows that the way President Kiir, as the chairman of SPLM, has been running the party is outside the laws and the regulations allowed by the SPLM constitution. So if you haven't read the article, read it. You can also go through the SPLM constitution of 2008, which was revised in 2012. It will explain to you why the appointment of Bol Mel is problematic. And also, it tells you that SPLM is not actually professionalizing into a conventional political party that adhere to principles that are required by the democratic process. So I will begin with the speech he gave when he was appointed as the deputy chairman of the SPLM.
This is for all of us, and I would like you to take notes, and if possible, you write.
So the way he speaks sounds really, really ominous. It's like he's warning people, and you can see how he first lean in. So if you watch the whole speech, he reads from his speech, and then he goes off script, and then gave that warning. And we'll go through it and see what he says. Some of them are appreciable, some of them are problematic because they come out as warning where he uses words like must or should or abide by, as if he's some dictatorial hegemon for ordering people to do things. So it sounds ominous, but let's see what he says. Some of the things he says I think you will agree with.
One, for our nation to be developed to its potential, we cannot compromise on peace, unity, and security.
I think peace is something on which all South Sudanese agree. So I don't think we have someone who will say what he just said is wrong. I think we agree with that.
SPLM has no military wing, nor does it need one.
That is technically true. But is it true in practice? On face value, he can say that because the SSPDF is the national army, quote unquote, and the SPLM is a political party that is trying to conventionalize and professionalize itself into a traditional political party. But we know the traditional link between SPLA, which has now transitioned into SSPDF, is not something we can wish away. But technically what he's saying is true. But in practice, it is not true because SSPDF is so linked to the SPLM that it becomes really, really difficult. If you see how they operate as if they are an extension of the SPLM. So on face value, we can agree with him, but that is not technically true.
We gave the SPLM to the people of South Sudan and place our full trust in the South Sudan People Defense Force, the only legitimate national army.
This is misguided because SPLM-IO was a rebel movement, and it will have the army, the military wing, as long as the agreement has not been finalized. So when he says that as if the SPLA has dissociated itself from the army and then the SPLM-IO has some sort of extra legal army that should not be, this is something that is misguided because we know why the SPLM-IO has a military wing. And we all know if the agreement is finalized and the SPLMIO still has a military wing, then we can question them why they have a military wing. But because the agreement has not been finalized and he's saying something like this, I think it's misleading. It's actually very dangerous. This is how problems are actually caused by things people already know.
SPLM came with SPLA. It's not because SPLA was abolished. It was because of for the sake of South Sudan, we made one army, one for one people, one nation.
That is common sense. Is there anyone who doubts what he just said? So I think repeating this is provocative. It's redundant, but it's also provocative. He says it because he wants to make a point, but it's provocative. We all know that is true. So why repeat something that is already true? It's to provoke people, it's to rile up the population, to be angry about something that they shouldn't be angry about.
I ask all political parties to do the same. All political parties. You are not allowed to have a military wing.
We all know that conventional political parties should not have military wings. That's common sense. So if there are political parties in Juba that are registered with military wings, then that is something unbecoming. But the so-called political parties are not actually political parties. These are rebel movements. So SPLMIO wasn't a conventional political party. It came back to Juba as a rebel movement that was fighting the government, so it had its own army. And as I said, the only way they can let go the military wing is if the agreement is finalized, and then they become the conventional political party with a convention and a chairman, not a CNC. So what Bol Mel is saying is actually misleading. And also, when he talks about SPLM was not abolished, that's not true. SPLA was abolished because we don't have SPLA anymore. So if SPLA was not abolished, then where is it? It has transitioned into SSPDF, as we said. So it wasn't somehow forgotten. It transformed itself into the SPLM, SSPDF. And that is also problematic because it cannot just wish away its historical connection with the SPLM. That would be infantilizing us and making us think that somehow that link between SPLM and SSPDF come SPLA has been completely dislinked. That's not really true.
Has only one president, one government, and one commander-in-chief. And that is the constitutional order.
So as I said, it's redundant to talk about the constitutional order and that we have one president and one commander-in-chief. These are things that all South Sudanese know. But we also know why we sometimes have other commanders-in-chief. It's because of the crisis that happened in 2013. So when he speaks as if he doesn't know this, it's denialism, which is also problematic. So when he talks about the constitutional order, what constitutional order is he talking about? The president doesn't follow the constitution. The constitution, if the constitution was being followed, then how come the president appoints the governors, appoints the national ministers, appoints the ministers in the states? He even appoints the independent commissions nationally and also in the states. He does that. So there's no constitution. Constitution, for example, says if the governor is removed by the president, there has to be a crisis threatening national security within that state. And the elections should be held within 60 days. Those are not followed. We now know that Bol Mel was appointed unilaterally by the president. He didn't follow the constitution. So what constitutional order is he talking about?
No political party has the right to control the militia or be led by a self-declared commander-in-chief. This is dangerous and an unacceptable breach of democratic norms. We must put an end to this madness. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Again, this is dishonest. And I think what makes it even more dangerous is when he says this and he knows this. That is to sort of institutionalize dishonesty. No one in South Sudan would want the country to have two armies. No one would want the country to have two presidents. So no one would want people to fight among themselves. But when leaders like him, who is the second senior official in the SPLM, who has a high chance to become the next flag bearer for the SPLM and the potential president, and he says things like this, when he knows why Riek Machar is a commander-in-chief of SPLM IO army. So we all know the agreement. So I think this is where it becomes really dangerous when officials say things like this. And for those of you who think, oh, there's a transition to the younger generation and there's somehow change in leadership, that's not really change. You can change the leadership, but you don't change the political culture that has been instituted, then you have not changed anything, because he's just going to go into the rhythm. In the second part, you're going to see that he says he's someone who follows order. He's someone who respects people, his superiors. So he would going to expect that from junior officers to sort of worship him. So this is problematic.
5, no one is above the law. Any group or individual operating as such must be also held accountable.
And the president in South Sudan is above the law. He can say anything, it happens. He doesn't follow the constitution. He has made the other arms of the government, the judiciary and also the legislature, they all kowtow to him. They do whatever he wants. So the president is above the law. And also we can see from his appointment of Bol Mel, he's also showing that he's above the law. He doesn't care about the SPLM constitution. He doesn't care about the transitional constitution in South Sudan. He's above the law. And he cannot be criticized, because if you criticize the president, you go to jail. So this is the problem with people like Bol Mel. He builds himself as someone who is going to be democratic, someone who cares about the people of South Sudan. He talks about development. He talks about agriculture. He talks about loving peace. But when he says these dishonest things, that people who are well placed to understand and look beyond the veneer of normalcy, the veneer of civility, then you should be worried. You should be worried as a South Sudanese. But there's a possibility that he may listen to people and then say, okay, if he's criticized, then what can he do to change?
I therefore call upon the people of South Sudan and the global democratic community to reject all armed groups operating outside the law.
I think it's difficult to be taken seriously if you're using the army to settle scores. There are many South Sudanese who are now in detention without trials. You know, they're picked up at their place of work and they're taken to the Blue House or other detention site, the other black sites. And instead of talking to the white army, as even if they have arms and they are some sort of non-state actors that are against the state, and you consider them as South Sudanese, then you will change the way you approach them. Because as a national leader, these are your people. You have to take care of them. You have to make sure they come into the legal order so that they don't attack the state. But if all you do is arm another ethnic group and then use them with the national army, something SPLA and John Garang used to call the counterinsurgency strategy. Counterinsurgency strategy is something the state is using. So when he talks about the peace-loving, democratic-loving people in the world to sort of rein in on the people who are carrying the arms against the South Sudanese government, he's prizing dishonesty among everything else. So that's the first part of his speech. Now the second part is the speech he gave when he was appointed vice president. And that speech has some things that we should be worried about. But at the same time, he talks about things that are valuable, things that are appreciable, things that I think if implemented can make South Sudan a brilliant country. So what we need to do is to sort of remind him, because we know President Kiir has said exactly the same things. He's been saying these things since 2005 about fighting corruption, about democracy, about providing services to the people. He said that. Look at his speech. If you look at his independence speech, brilliant. Talks about corruption, talks about collective action, about taking care of ourselves. But what has he done? Nothing. Bol Mel is saying the same thing. So we should not be really rushed. It was a mistake many people committed in 2005 when John Garang died. And President Kiir became the leader of SPLM, the president of Southern Sudan region then, and then the first vice president of the Republic of Sudan. Many people rushed to say he's very civil. He's non-violent, he's conciliatory, so he's going to bring people together. And many people compared him favorably with John Garang. It was a rush. One of the things you do is give someone a chance to prove themselves. Do not rush to praise or denigrate. That's why we may say, okay, let us give Bol Mel a chance if he becomes the heir apparent. But many people rushed and they, some of them apologize about what they said about President Kiir. Not just South Sudanese, but many analysts, Western analysts, thought he was someone who could develop South Sudan, but he didn't. So there are many indications about Bol Mel that we should be cautious about, but I know some people become really enamored, they become really emotional and excited, and then they praise without thinking about, how you should analyze the issues that a leader comes up with. So one of the things you do for a leader, you look at what they have done and analyze those things. You judge the leader based on what they have done, what they've said. You don't judge them based on how you feel about them, where they come from, and people are excited about sort of generational inclusion. So this, I'll post the next part as a separate video so that you can see what he said and why some of us should be worried and some of the things we can caution him about, because he said in that speech, in February 13th, he said he's a listener. So we'll give him the benefit of the doubt and see if he actually listens.